How's everyone doing today? This is Chopping It Up Hardcore with Hal Capone, discussion number 83. Today, my special guest is Jeff Bartlett, and I also have a surprise special guest, Rob Davis, both from the amazing powerhouse juggernaut band Breed Extinction from Connecticut. Just amazing. Love that band. Everything they put out is just stellar. Jeff was also in Just for Today, and he's in a new band called Fixtures, which we'll get into. Rob was in Catharsis for a while. We'll touch on that, and it's just a surprise that Rob's joining. I'm thrilled. I'm honored. Hope everybody's doing well. Happy Friday the 13th. Watch some horror movies tonight if you can. Seisha reunion shows. Fucking just amazing. I don't know, I'm at a loss for words for that. Jeff, I see you, so I'm gonna grab you. See if this works. Sending it, Jeff. What's it saying to you? See the little person on the bottom with the arrow on the bottom of the You're Live? Try to click that and then try to send me an invite. See if that works. Oh, I see. All right. Hold on. Let me try again. I'll keep trying. We're gonna make this happen. Hold on. Hold on here. There we go. See if that works. There we go.
Yeah, I'm no good with technology, Hal. We'll make it work.
Perfect. It's working though now. So, Jeff, thank you so much for taking time out to do this. I really appreciate it. I know I had to goad you a little bit to get you to do this, but
yeah, I mean, who wants to talk to the bass player, right? I mean, but I was actually surprised by folks who seem interested in kind of talking about back in the day. So I'm on board.
Yeah, I think it's like a resurgence of like old screamy heavy bands coming. More interest now that are actually happening nowadays.
Jerome's Dream is playing 40 minutes for me tonight. And I mean, how many times did we see them or play with them back in the day? Like it's cool to see. I heard you mention the Seisha shows that we just saw that they sold out, I think 2 dates in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's amazing. I mean, it's funny. That's like back in the day. I think when I joined Breed Extinction, Seisha had already broken up and Off Minor was already a band. 'Cause I remember having to scramble to get a copy of the Seisha full length. Like I went to New York City and went to, I can't even remember the record store, and they didn't have them out, and I had to ask for it. And the guy had like 2 copies left under the desk,
Yeah.
So that's been a minute. Yeah. Joe from Truth knows what's up.
I was lucky enough to see him once way back in the day in Worcester, Massachusetts at Tin Can Full of Dreams Fest. And it was funny. I was talking to Jamie about it, and he doesn't even remember playing that show. So he was, but Pete from Sinaloa, confirmed it because he's the one who set up the show. He's like, they definitely played because, Jamie's like, I don't even know if we played that. I'm like, no, you definitely did.
They played everything. Like Off Minor we played Tin Can Full of Dreams one year. I don't remember. It wasn't the same year as Record Hospital, but there was one year we played and they played. They were at Record Hospital when we played. I booked them to play with Orchid and Converge in Connecticut at the space in Middletown. I think we were booking shows at. Yeah. They were just everywhere. That was like our favorite. That was my favorite band for a while there. They were so good live, and they were a train wreck, but it was like the best kind of train wreck. Coming from a band that was also a train wreck live, you either got an amazing performance or you got just a crash burn disaster. So I identify with that, as I'm sure you're aware. I mean, you came to like 6 or 7 Breed Extinction shows over a period of a year and a half. I'm sure one of those was an absolute fucking train wreck. Right?
No, actually,
which one was the train wreck, Hal?
I don't think there was one for me, honestly. Like the first time I saw you guys was at Brian Frenette's birthday party up in the Student Union building in Yukon. That was the first time I saw you guys, and then it just went on from there. It was like a year and a half. I saw you guys maybe 6 or 7 times after that. So
how many lineups in a year and a half did you see? How many Breed Extinction lineups were there? Were we a 5-piece when you saw us first?
I think that was a 5-piece, and then it was 3, and then it was 4 again, and then it might have been back to 3 again.
So when I joined, John Wheelock, the original bass player, had decided that he wasn't going to be in the band. He was going to travel for a while or something like that. So they were looking for a bass player, and so it was Greg on vocals and Rob on guitar and vocals and Tristan playing drums. And at some point, John came back, and it was like, oh, hey, cool. Well, what's the band status? We were just like, like John, let's just play with John. So there's a period of time where we had 2 bass players. And I played, I don't even know what you would call it. I just played like rhythm bass. I would just play power chords through a Rat, which was really fun. And John would play kind of the bass parts on the records. And then at some point, John departed again. I went back to playing sort of the bass parts that were on those earlier records that I hadn't been a part of recording. And then at some point, Greg, the vocalist, decided that he wasn't going to do that anymore. So the Wallingford show, you've posted a couple of videos of recently, I think. That was Greg's last show. So we played a couple old songs with Greg on vocals. Then he walked off, and we played a couple of songs as a 3-piece, and some of the songs that would go on to be on the Alaska record. So you had to have seen at least that, right? And then and then with drummer, I mean, I'm sure. Is Rob joining? Have you heard anything from Rob? Is he popping in, or do I?
He is on. Let me see if I can get him to join. Let's see.
Got it. He may not. He may internet. When Tristan, the original drummer, quit like 36 hours before we went on tour, and I'm thoroughly qualified to tell that story, but it would be a funnier story if Rob were here to.
I just sent Rob an invite, so hopefully he.
Awesome. That would have been 2002. So in 2002, so that was sort of not too long after the Awaken split came out. We were planning to go on tour, and I don't remember how this went down. I just remember Tristan quit. Like we were all at Rob's house rehearsing to get ready to go on like a 7 or 10 day tour, and I was like, "Oh, he's not coming. Tristan's not coming." And we did it anyway, which was super. It actually worked out okay. I remember a couple really good shows on that tour. Rob played drums instead of guitar, and then we had John play guitar instead of bass, but he had a broken leg. And we had a guy, Dan, who did some zine in Australia and wanted to come see us, and he was going to come join us for a couple of days on tour. He landed in the United States, and we were like, well, hey, we need a singer because Rob can't scream while he's playing drums. Do you want to be in our band for a week? So we ended up doing a tour with a guy we didn't know on vocals, our bass player playing guitar with a broken foot, sitting in a chair, and our guitar player playing drums, which were more than a few shareable stories from that tour that I think you and I discussed a little bit.
I did send him an invite. They said he got booted off. We're going to keep trying to get him in there. But usually, my first question that I usually ask is, what kind of music were you listening to as a kid, and what turned you into liking hardcore and punk music? Like, what were you listening to as a kid, and then what kind of drew you to the hardcore, heaviness?
That's it. Actually, I have a good answer for this, I think. So, when I was 13 or 14, 12, I mean, like Nirvana and that stuff was coming out, and I was, part of that generation. So I was, that's what I listened to. I listened to that stuff, grunge and kind of some of the heavier music at the time, as most folks did. I think I had a couple friends who were into hardcore, and I just really, really resisted it. Like I went to a show at, I can't remember where it was, but it was a Hatebreed Overcast show in '96, might have been '95, and it was just like a bunch of fights. You know what I mean? It was just a guys crews of guys punching each other in the face the whole time, and I was like, I have no interest in this. Like Overcast was pretty cool. I mean, obviously, but no interest. And then I ended up going to see Vision of Disorder and Snapcase and Refused the next year. I can't remember if that was at the Hanover or the LNG. It had to have been the LNG. But again, crews and people fighting. It was when Refuse was still on Victory.
Whoa, there it is.
Dude, Rob, are you dialing in from like a mountain cabin somewhere?
I am in fact.
Fantastic. Thanks for hopping in.
Yeah. Thanks for. I heard you start to go into the tour with Australian Dan.
Yeah, we're gonna have to tell the story, but let me finish this first. Do it. First question. So I went to that show, and it was the same thing. It was like Refused were amazing, and then people were like not into it because they weren't wearing the right Jinkos. It was shitty. There were people getting in fights, and it was just like the scene I didn't want to be a part of. I remember thinking they were great. I went home and I bought their Victory record, and that was good. But I just didn't want to be like the scene just didn't appeal to me. And then a couple of years later, I met Jay Prince from Just for Today. Yeah, Joe, I'll tell you all about it. I'm reading comments and like folks are like, dude, you saw Snapcase and Refuse. Like, yeah, that was like the scene back then.
That was at the tune-in, wasn't it?
That sounds right. It was 96. It was Vision of Disorder and Snapcase and Refused. And I had like blue hair at the time because I wasn't into hardcore. And somebody asked me like, are you the band? I was like, oh, because I have blue hair, I must be like, is that how cliquey the scene is? And I had no interest. I had no interest. And a couple of years later, I met Jay Prince from Just for Today. We were working together at a gas station somewhere. We got to be friends. And Jay, like just against my will, bought me a copy of a Catharsis record and then loaned me Your Heart Stops and sort of introduced me to this music, and those were on rotation for me nonstop. And then 4 months later, I was showing up asking this guy to try out to play bass in this band, which is a pretty rapid sort of sinking into the depths of being involved in the hardcore scene at the time.
Yeah. Now, were you guys both born and raised in Connecticut?
I
was, yeah.
Yep. We are a Connecticut band. Yeah. Apparently that's a secret according to a podcast I recently saw. But yes, Connecticut, born and bred.
Yeah, it was in dispute. We were. It sounded like you were going to ask a question, Hal. I didn't want to.
I was just wondering, like, what parts of Connecticut were you guys from?
I was born and raised in like the I don't know, as close as you get to like the poor section of Fairfield County. Like
that's an important distinction. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you say Fairfield County and somebody's like, well, that's the, one of the 3 richest counties in America. But yeah. And then Jeff, you were like New Haven area, right? Like
yeah,
I was basically Southwest and Jeff was South Central, I think.
Yeah. Wallingford, Meriden, and yeah, definitely people have an impression of Connecticut as being this like. I mean, it's part of what it's part of what I felt like we were rebelling against. I mean, there's this whole section of the state, super rich, white, wealthy people, and there's a big section of the state where people can't get by, and I that certainly hasn't gotten better in the last 20 years. And it was just easy to be young and fucking mad about it.
Yeah, we Jeff and I were talking yesterday. I think he sent me a text and he was like, hey man, does Breed Extinction have an online presence? Is there a MySpace page, anything? And I was like, I don't know. There might be a Bandcamp. And when we were searching for it, I was like, okay, like I can't find anything that I ever set up, but I did find a podcast that from like only 6 months ago, some hour-long podcast that reviewed the 7-inch as like was this a one and done band, or like what's the deal? Is this worth listening to? It's just a podcast that explores what's it called? It's called First 7-Inch Club. So I literally just discovered it yesterday, and then out of my own self-interest, I was like, let me hear what they're saying. If they trashed us or if we're cool.
What's the review of a record I wrote and recorded 20 years ago?
Yeah. I think Greg. It sounded like Greg got the worst rap, although.
Did he?
Well, there was a lot of. Yeah. Did you listen to it or no?
I made it happen. Yeah, no, I just found out about it today, actually.
Oh, okay.
I made it happen. They were talking too much shit. Like, they were talking too much shit about, like, this guy's got a Rickenbacker. And it's like, fuck
yeah.
I was what do you want to do?
They threw Jeff under the bus immediately. They were like, I'm pretty sure this is a Crime Think band. I'm pretty sure they're like, I don't know, hopping trains to their shows and bringing their dogs but that dude's got a Rickenbacker, so for sure they're from Connecticut. Like that's a $1,500 fee.
Yeah, meanwhile, the reality is like, you know, we're like literally shoplifting our meals, and you know, like I bought a half broken Rickenbacker for a couple $100 at the time. Like it's funny because to me, Rob, like to me, that's like not understanding that people who are young and like excited about this thing they're doing would be willing to sacrifice like food in order to
yeah.
have a decent instrument. Like that was the thing that mattered to me at the time. And it's easy to write that off as like a cynical 40-year-old white guy. But like, dude, like don't discount that there are people who felt and were as excited about what they were doing as I felt like I was at the time. You know, so I got
you owned a Rickenbacker and you lived in your van.
Yeah, right.
but yeah, no, I think the First 7-Inch Club podcast, I think it sounds like they were reviewing a record made by, I think I was 19 at the time. Yeah, but they were reviewing it with like, you know, 40-year-old lenses. So of course it's easy to look back and be like, man, the things we were into were so silly. I mean, I see some of the videos of that you'll post of like a show from UConn or from wherever, Hal, and I'll look at the audience and I'll be like, man, I didn't realize how silly we must have all looked at the time to outside eyes, right? Like how clicky, like how black is your hair, how tight is your t-shirt, how white is your belt, you know, like like, you know, and you could look around the room and you're like, man, everyone's got that. Everyone's doing the thing. Yeah. So, but anyway, I hold nothing against them. I think their podcast was, it was funny, and they certainly nailed they hit the nail on the head when they were like, this sounds like a Catharsis worship band. And I was like, yeah, 100%. That's definitely how it started. Yeah.
And also you were in that band. It wasn't like a
right. Yeah. Well, they that was in dispute too. They were like, I heard a rumor somewhere that one of these guys was in Catharsis. I'm pretty sure it's bullshit. I think they're just riding coattails. But that's right. It's fine. I listened to the whole thing, and at the end they come around and they're like, after they got done taking us to task, they were like, yeah, so what do you think? Solid record, man. Yeah, the one guy, he said the way he reviews the records is like, is this something you should pass on? Should you wait till it's in a bargain bin? Would you pay full price or would you pay collector price? And he was like, this is a solid full price record. And the other guy had another scale based in billions of dollars, and I think he gave us out of a $5 billion scale, he gave us a $4 billion review. So
nice.
Yeah, so they're not haters. They're just shit talkers. That's fine.
Yeah. Well, the funny thing is, I think it comes from what, maybe they were more into the metalcore, like, maybe they were into more convergy in pieces, like metalcore stuff, and then they kind of listened to that record, and you know what I mean? It's not, I don't know, like genres are so weird, and everybody has this weird and you don't like this genre, you like this genre. Oh, it's kind of that part of this genre, so it's okay. But I feel like if you were like us, going to the same shows and stuff like that, and you listened to the first Breed Extinction 7-inch, I fucking loved it. When I first heard it, I loved it. I was in love with it. And then the Awakened album, I was blown away too. And then on top of that, you guys just kept getting better and better. Like Alaska came out, and then I heard you guys broke up, and I was like crushed because I want more Breed Extinction music. You know what I mean?
I think, yeah, no, I appreciate all that. I think I'd like to think that whatever preceded Alaska, had we survived that, would have been a step further into exploring further creative ideas, and also just getting better at our instruments, and being more mature people, and having like a wider variety of influences, because for sure, like, in high school, I fucking wore out the Catharsis 7-inch, and then got into His Heroes Gone and all these other things, and I was like, I was a drummer at the time, and actually the Breed Extinction kind of came about because Greg and I had been we had been like hawking ourselves as like, you know, drummer and singer available for good band, and we couldn't find anyone that was writing the guitar riffs that we wanted to hear.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I can play guitar, whatever. But, you know, and then we happened to find a drummer that was good, and we were off to the races. But yeah, so learning my second instrument kind of as we went. I like to think a couple years in, you know, we kept getting better. Like Jeff became a better bassist, I became a better guitar player.
Yeah.
And I think we felt less boxed in too. Like I think as bands like Page 99 and Majority Rule and things like that came into favor, you know, Jeff would be listening to like OK Computer, and I would probably still be spinning like his Heroes Gone records.
Right.
But I just like to think that the influences became broader, and we probably felt more secure about expressing ourselves in different ways, which I'd like to think would translate to just better music, or like, you know, more broadly appealing, which more mature music. But no, instead we exploded quietly. We just kind of fizzled out, really.
Somehow you ended up playing drums on a Breed Extinction tour anyway.
That's right.
Being
That's right.
that band, so there's no escaping your past. Rob.
Yeah, well, you started telling that story. How far did you get? Yeah, we had a tour where the first drummer decided 2 days before tour. I was like, hey man, you wanna come do the rehearsals? And he's like, no, actually, I don't think I'm interested in touring. And I was like, oh, you mean like after this? And he's like, no.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, all right.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jeff was on board. This was the era of 2 bass players, so
Yeah.
thankfully we had some extra people on deck. We had the Australian kid visiting. He was visiting to, like, you know, part of his like U.S. visit was I'm going to go on tour with this you know, this crime thing band. I found out through Inside Front or whatever. He was stoked.
Yeah.
I think he had actually written a 7-inch review in Australia, but yeah. And then so the other bass player, John, he worked with a guy that had shit talked our drummer as like, oh, your band's cool, but your drummer's not very good. I can play drummers better than that. And I was like, John, call that dude. So he showed up, and he was terrible.
I forgot part of the story.
He wasn't a drummer at all. And I was like,
Yeah.
all right, I'll do it. And then I'll teach one of these bass players how to play my guitar parts, and we'll train the Australian how to sing my parts, and we'll make it happen. And of course, we ended up in prison.
Yeah.
The tour.
Okay. You're skipping some parts of the story, but
Yeah.
right.
Well,
Of
there's
course,
detail.
we could end up in prison. John, when did we find out John had a broken leg? Did we know John had a broken leg at the time we realized he was going to have?
Yeah, John broke his foot like the week before, so he was in a cast. So we were like, that's cool. One of the bass players will just sit in a chair
And play guitar.
and play the instrument he's not familiar with the parts he doesn't know that I'm going to teach him right now. But yeah, I think that was the thing about, as terrible as that tour was, it probably created more memories than any of the other tours.
There were high points. I mean, like, when you say as terrible as that tour was, I think what you mean is
But musically.
all got arrested and we had to go to prison in Louisville and we missed our show in Knoxville. But I have a couple really good memories from that tour. We played the Brick House right before we all went to prison.
Brick House. Oh yeah. Uh-huh. And
Bass
that was actually pretty good.
Yeah, it was like people were super, super into it. And then we played the last show of that tour. Didn't we play in DC at that big space with Page 99 Majority Rule? Wasn't that the 2002 tour? Because I remember reading a review of it.
Yeah, the Wilson Center.
And Page 99 closed with By the Fireplace in White, and they did like a 20-minute rendition of it. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen. There were people people who weren't the drummer holding drums in the air and hitting them at the end. It was mad.
But the vibe in the room was like blood in the water and like a shark.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it was like you were just waiting for that ongoing bass line to just break.
Yeah.
And everyone start exploding.
there were for years, there was a review of one of our shows from that tour, and that was the show. It was like, hey, I saw this band Breed Extinction on this tour, and I didn't really know what was going on. There was like one guy in a chair, it looks like maybe but you know, things seemed kind of out of control at parts, but it was like a really favorable review. Like, basically these guys are a mess, but they're rad. And like, it always felt like a pretty good assessment of sort of that era of that band.
I think that was the review that was quoted as saying, Breed Extinction is like, yeah, it was like, this was a mess, but awesome. It was like Tourette's at a karaoke bar.
It's not inaccurate.
No.
Now,
All
do
right.
you guys remember the show that I set up? I don't know who I know I was talking to Jeff about this, but I don't know who I got in contact with. But I set up that show at Exit 23 in Haverhill, Massachusetts, with you guys. It was supposed to be Schematic of a Waking Life, but Transistor jumped on instead. So I think it was my old band, High School Sweethearts, Breed Extinction, Transistor, and then maybe one other band opened like that. I didn't
Like
really
maybe Wolves or something like that.
I don't. I think it was just like kind of like a generic hometown band that I was just like, yeah, you guys can play. You know what I mean? Because at that point, Schematic had dropped off, and I knew Brian Faber pretty well, the drummer, the old drummer of Transistor, and he was like, yeah, we'll definitely play. So do you remember? I don't remember who I got in contact with at that show.
I didn't do a lot of the booking. I think if we were a three-piece at the time, I imagine you probably would have talked to Jeff.
Yeah.
Jeff was way more internet savvy than I was.
Yeah, but I have no memory. So if you talk to me, all reminiscence of that is gone. But if that's the Exit 23 show I'm thinking of, that was the show where we equipment with Transistor, and I don't mean like one band, you know, shared their equipment with the other band and everyone used one set. Show where
We just used all of the equipment of both bands.
Full stacks, and we had full stacks, and we were like, well, let's just all use all of it simultaneously. And I like, of the shows I've participated in, I think that was probably the loudest we've ever played, and probably the closest I've ever been, and or hope to ever be to amplifiers that loud. So if you had a big part making that happen.
I think mostly, Hal, you posted some footage like just the other day. I think was that from that Exit 20 that tour?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So I remember. I think what I remember most was talking to Nat from Transistor. It was where we just started like geeking out about like amps and yeah. I remember talking to him a bunch and all the shows just kind of blur together. Like I just play the same thing every time. So that's not the part that's memorable.
Yeah. I think the shows that I have footage of is Brian Furnet's birthday party. Then I have Record Hospital Fest that you guys played with. It was like Off Minor, Wolves, 1905.
Was that Providence or Boston or something like that?
That was in Boston.
Yeah.
Then the Friendly Fest that Jeff and I were talking about, where Greg was like
Greg's
his last show there, last show. The Haverhill show, and then one other show I have taped, but it's like trapped on an 8mm. I think it was like another Connecticut show. It might have been at the the Hillel building.
Yeah, I remember that. I feel like I may have seen video footage of. I think Matt's last show with us was at Hillel with like Ampere.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like I may have seen some footage of that floating around. The funny thing is, I don't. Of all the memories I have of you at shows, Hal, I don't ever remember seeing you with a camera. So I have no idea where this footage came from.
We just shot this morning. Explain to him why we never saw you with a camera, because I was trying to find pictures of Hal with a camera from that Wallingford show where we know he has video footage, and like I have two pictures of people with cameras, and neither of them is Hal. And I messaged him this morning like, I don't. I guess one of these is probably you. Hal, explain this mystery away, because this is funny.
When I would go to shows with my friends, especially Fest, like Friendly Fest or Record Hospital Fest, there's so many bands playing, and I kind of want to just geek out to the bands that I like. So we would take turns filming, and I would give them my camera, and I'd be like, oh, can you film this band, or can you film that band? So in that picture of you, I'm standing right in the back of you with
Right.
with the Knicks jersey on, because
Yeah.
I'd always. And then there was a Waterbury show that you guys played with Crestfallen, and
Yep.
I would just take random. I would have somebody
Yeah,
take
that
my
was
camera, and then I
that
would
was
take
magical,
pictures
and,
like this. There's a picture of Jeff
Yeah.
with Mike from Page 99 and the Crestfallen guys,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
then
that's it.
and then this one of you, Rob, at
Yep.
Waterbury, like that. So I would just, it was always like, I'd get so bored holding a camera that I'd want my friends to, I'd always be like, hey, can you just video record this band, or hey, how about you do it this time? Or there's a daughter show that I recorded, and I wanted to just freak out with daughters, you know what I mean? And I'd known those guys for a long time, so I just had
They're,
my
they're
friends.
still a band. That blows my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that. I have. It sounds like it's still pretty noisy and chaotic, but
Yeah.
they've done something that's given them broader appeal, like and staying power.
Check out their newest. It's very different. I mean, their first record's essentially grind, and their second record is essentially weird grind. I guess if you had to try to categorize that, but their most recent stuff is just absolutely off the map. You would actually really like it.
Cool.
Yeah, it's amazing to think that like 20 years later that band is still doing something creative in a way that's different than what they were doing than we knew them and play with them.
Yeah. I mean, you they're not the band I would have expected to persevere of
Right.
Well, yeah, their reputation back in the day was like to never show up for shows, and even though I've been friends with those guys for a long time, even when they were like young kids. Like Lex was, I think, 14 or 15 when I met him and John, and when they were As the Sun Sets, I'd always like book a show, and they'd be like yes, and then they wouldn't show up. You know what I mean? But
right, I forgot about As the Sun Sets.
Yeah.
Wait, was As the Sun Sets also related to? Did they share members with Ass Spatula?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, I don't think so. But I
My wife is laughing over there.
minutes in before there's been an ass spatula reference. You had 31 minutes. Cool.
I kind of wanted to touch on the Connecticut scene though, because for me it was very special back in the day. Also for me too, because like Jeff was saying, he kind of was turned off by the tough guys punching each other at tune-in shows and stuff like that. But that's kind of where I was like thriving in hardcore for a while, because I mean I'm 50 years old, so I was into that metalcore stuff for a long time, and then I started getting into, I found Seisha. I saw Seisha for the first time way back in the day, and that kind of turned my head towards the other side of like heavy music, and that's what I started getting into music like that. And when I started going to shows down in Connecticut, Brian was setting up a ton of shows from bands.
Yeah. He was lord of the scene for a couple of years there.
I mean, that scene was just so special, and I wanted you guys to talk about it a little bit, because you had bands like, you guys, Schematic, Barstow, Diallo was like, nobody talks about Diallo, but Diallo is so fucking good, and nobody talks about him.
They were pretty short-lived, I think.
Yeah, but they're so good.
Yeah. I mean, that was so I was actually in a band with the Greg and I were in a band with Mickey from Diallo, and God, I can't remember the bass player. Kyle? Matt? Maybe, I think it was Matt. Mickey and Matt, does that sound right?
I think so, yeah.
We were Greg and I were pretty close to them for a little while. I think before Diallo, Mickey and Matt had a band called TCB, that would play like lower Connecticut with Greg and I had another band before Breed Extinction that's not worth mentioning. It was more of a high school band, but it was like baby crust bands that would play shows together, and then we started Breed Extinction and moving more into like Yukon shows and more like regional stuff, and then they started Diallo maybe, I don't know, 2000, 2001. It was like just a year or two behind us, and
they always, like, every time I saw them or I listened to the 7-inch that they had, it was always crushing stuff. I wanted to talk about First Aid Kit too. I know it's not really that heavy, but like First Aid Kit was really special to me for a Connecticut band as well.
Same.
And then when Brian started They and the Children, that was like I just want you guys to kind of talk about that scene and how all those Connecticut bands were playing together. It was a special scene because I was driving from New Hampshire all the way to Connecticut. We're talking, Waterbury is almost 3.5 hours away. Yeah, 3.5 hours away from me. So just talk about Connecticut scene at that time.
Well, I'll start by saying First Aid Kit is an example of that's an example of one of the bands that I would have thought, could have persevered 10 years down the line and actually done something special. Or even Just for Today at that. Just for Today played a show with the Hawk's Nest with Taking Back Sunday before Taking Back Sunday was on MTV.
Yes.
And, the 5 people that were at that show, everybody there was like, Just for Today is getting really fucking good. Their new material is awesome. And then Taking Back Sunday played, and we were like,
One of the guys from Taking Back Sunday, I was the bass player in Just for Today. One of the guys from Taking Back Sunday came up to our merch table before they went on and was like, "You guys are so much better than we are." And then they went, right, and it was like, it was kind of a cool feeling at the time. But
it was great. But then a month later, seeing them on TV, it was just like, really, that band? All right.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Connecticut kind of gets a bad rap. Not a bad rap, but people forget about it. I mean, so First Aid Kit, Nick was the bass player in First Aid Kit. Nick was a guitar player in Just for Today.
Right.
Or Just for Today called All I Ask with 2 of the guys from Orchid. When you think of Orchid, you don't think of Connecticut, but 2 of those dudes are from Connecticut. It's just, I always think of, where I grew up, you're within 2 hours of New York, you're within 3 hours of Boston, you're an hour plus from Providence. I mean, we went and saw one of Orchid's last weekend shows was in New Jersey, and Philadelphia. It was 3 hours to Philadelphia. So we all hopped in the car, drove to Philly, and saw, an amazing show. So you're kind of in the middle of all of it. And it seems like a lot of people who were in a lot of those bands either started in Connecticut or were from Connecticut.
Wait, I mean, it's also still just geographically, it's an important cultural hub for artists. Like even today, Greg from Breed Extinction, he's been a pretty successful recording engineer for the last 20 years, and he's still in Connecticut, but you've got bands coming up from Brooklyn or coming down from Boston or flying over from LA because it's like a bedroom community of New York City. So you've got a lot of talent and a lot of artists, and they're just like, let's go to Sleepy, Connecticut to make our record. So that it's not necessarily punk related, but I think the geography of it is really makes sense. I remember working with a guy who lived in Seattle at one point, and he was in bands, and he was like, oh yeah, when you tour out of Seattle, it's like you have to drive you're driving 8 hours. Oh yeah, and you're right over there, Jeff. Now, but he's like you drive 8 hours east before you play your first show.
Yeah.
Or you're driving 2 hours south to Portland, and then 11 hours south from there to get to the Bay Area.
Yeah. And we saw that when we did our West Coast tour. As soon as we got out of the Northeast, it was like, oh, this sucks. It's an 8 hour drive between every city
every day. Yeah.
Music that might come out. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I think New England especially, just I would say DC and up, and maybe Philly and east, and DC and north, all of that is has a really special relationship to touring, because you can hit a lot of different cultural pockets. Yeah. You might have you might have a screamo scene in Connecticut, but an emo scene in New Jersey, and a math rock scene in Massachusetts, and all of a sudden they're all playing the same shows. So it made it, as you were describing before, it made it kind of special. I remember one show we went to in Worcester, Mass. I forget what festival it was, but it was Barrett was playing, and Yulcid and Cave-In, but also there was a magician, just some guy did a magic act on stage, and everyone was there for it. It's really cool that it supported artists of all types.
I think Brian had a similar type of thing at the Student Union building. Didn't he have a puppet show during, I forget who played up there, but it was in between band, there was some weird little puppet show that happened. I have it filmed somewhere.
I don't remember watching that, but I remember seeing that it was a thing. I was too cool for puppets, or I was too busy fixing Jeff's broken gear or something.
Yeah. Brian, I love you, but I feel like that's something I would have intentionally avoided as well. I took myself so seriously at that time, you know what I mean? And like, I guess that's one of the regrets I have. Although I think
that's the nature of being 20, though.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like when I look back at it, like I feel like hardcore music saved my life. Like I don't know what would have happened to me without joining. I mean, I joined Breed Extinction and Just for Today within like a month of each other, and I was in 2 bands for the better years, and I don't know if I'd be here without that. And like, so yeah, I took myself too seriously. When I think back on that time, I feel like, oh, I should have had more fun at the moment, or I should have taken myself less time, and maybe I should have gone to the goddamn puppet show. Sorry, Brian. Hal Capone show, but I will watch it now.
Well, I guess I'll say I don't regret not seeing the puppet show, but I wish I was maybe like. I mean, this is what all middle-aged people say. It's like I wish I knew what I knew now about being like secure enough in my position in the world to just be supportive of other people, and not have my head up my own ass about how cool my band was or how cool I thought it was or whatever,
Yeah, I remember Tour 03, and like Matt wanted to get like vegan donuts or something, and we were like, oh, this isn't we're not tourists, we're serious musicians. Like in retrospect, like of course he thought I was a dick,
Yeah.
Hey, before we dropped the puppet show concept, was it a good puppet show? I feel like we're lumping shows together because recently it was fucking traumatic, and I'm hoping it's better than that.
No, it wasn't a good puppet show.
That just proves that our instincts were correct.
Yes.
But the funny thing is that you're sitting on footage of a puppet show.
Yeah.
It wasn't good when it started, but you're the archivist.
No. I don't have the full puppet show recorded.
Oh, you turned off the camera. You had some forethought.
It was a little blurb of it, and then I was like,
you were like, no one's gonna want to see this.
Yeah.
Let me save the tape.
You guys actually played Orchid's second to last show ever at the Tin Can Full of Fest.
Tin Can
show
Full of
in Providence.
I think we played really early that day. Maybe we played at like 3 p.m. or something, and the show started. The show was like noon to 10 p.m. or something, and we were like, the sun was still out when we played.
Yep. I have I think I posted some video footage of that as well just a couple days ago. You guys played like right around where like Wolves and Life Detecting Coffins played. I think you guys are right in that little mix of bands.
Yeah, there was a while there, like a good 6-month year window where it felt like every other show was with Wolves.
Yeah.
Now that you say that, just for today, I wanted to touch a little on that too. I'm pretty sure that I saw Just for Today in Connecticut at one point and never put 2 and 2 together that you were in that band in Breed Extinction at that time. I know one of the members was in First Aid Kit, but that music's not readily available. I've only heard one song online. Is that music Just for Today available for anybody to listen to? Actually,
it's on Jay and Sue. So the guitar player who's in First Aid Kit is Nick Santor. Jay Prince and I just talked about this like an hour before we went on live here. It is online. It is there. It's something we've been thinking about because we realized the Breed Extinction stuff's on. I'm surprised at how little of that era survived because it was the internet. Like everything was on the internet, and then really it was the early days of the internet. And I guess we've found that platforms disappear, and people get old, and whoever has to be in charge of whatever account that the music is on, those things change. And so I guess there's not as much surviving from what feels like the recent past as I expected. So we'll try to dig some of that stuff up. I know the Just for Today EP that they recorded in God City right before I joined that band. Both these bands I joined after their initial recordings. That's online. That is online, and it holds up pretty well. I just listened to it an hour ago, and it sounds pretty good.
Yeah. And where can you find that? Is that a Bandcamp or is it YouTube or where can people listen to that?
It's Bandcamp. Jay, post a link in the chat if you're still here. We'll share it. But yeah, that was a really important. That band was an important part of my life too. And it was just part of the scene. Like, it was totally fine to be in like a twinkly emo band and have box and also be in Breed Extinction. Like, that was just how that was.
For the record, I also I had a very short stint in Just for Today. There was a reunion show.
Yes.
Where Jeff was living in Tennessee at the time.
Sounds right. Yep.
This was 2011.
Yeah.
You were in Tennessee, and
yep.
NATO, the singer of Just for Today, the first singer of Just for Today, he and I were in like a sci-fi metal band in North Carolina, and we happened to be on tour in Connecticut. So NATO took over vocals, I took over drums, and then both Jay and Nick Santor were at the show, and Dave was the original bass player of Just for Today.
Dave Iannucci, no shit.
Yeah. So it was 4 original members with me on drums, and we played I don't know, 3 maybe 4 songs of that first Just for Today like EP. And I also see Jay posted just now. It's Just for Today CT at Bandcamp.
Yeah.
Is the
it's out there.
We can find that record.
Yeah.
I was harping on Jeff about putting Breed Extinction stuff on the streaming service. I'm like, where is it? I'm like, Alaska, you can't find Alaska anywhere, like on any streaming thing at all. So I was like,
yeah, and that should be the easiest one, right? Like,
yeah,
like, I mean, ripping CDs to digital it's already done for you. So I'm surprised that one's not available, but grateful that somebody else took the time to put the vinyl on digital.
Yeah. Because both finals are on YouTube, actually.
Yeah. We were talking. Jeff and I were talking yesterday, in trying to decide, trying to hunt where this material existed, and it sounds like we should and hopefully will remember to set up a Bandcamp. At which point, I'm sure Breed Extinction at Bandcamp.com is not taken. So expect that to be where it is.
Through legal action, I'm sure. We'll take care of that. Somebody has to have it. I mean, somebody has to have. Again, it's a CD, and you just gotta stay. Yeah,
I mean, I have the CD. I could rip the files. So it'll probably be me that does it. I'm the least competent, but I'm probably the most likely to follow through.
Yeah. I don't have a copy of the CD anymore, so I'm counting on you to dig up the files if Greg doesn't have them.
I was also mentioning. I beat the shit. I wore my Breed Extinction Alaska shirt so much that it was like there was holes under the armpits and there was holes everywhere.
Yeah.
I wore the shit out of that shirt.
Mine is still kicking. Mine
really?
Is like, I mean, really? It's like, it's threadbare, and it lost its sleeves 10 years ago. But it's still kicking. It's you can barely make it out. I think there's probably there might be a couple of training videos that I put on Instagram recently where I'm probably wearing it like while working out or something.
Yeah.
So you might be able to barely make it out. It's the black one with the goldish ink, I think.
Yeah. I loved that shirt back then. Also, I wanted to speak about Catharsis for a minute with you, Rob. I know you joined kind of late in their tenure. Can you just talk about how that happened? And I know you played a reunion show as well. I think was it 2013 that you played a reunion show. How did that kind of work itself into you joining Catharsis?
Oh, well, so excuse me. Yeah, so Greg and I were huge Catharsis fans before Breed Extinction, and this was one of the reasons we were like, we should start a band that plays riffs we like. And I was like, yeah, I'll pick up a guitar and write riffs like that. And that's kind of how Breed Extinction started. And so we were friends with the guys from like setting up shows with them and stuff. And and at some point I'm sure we just hoped that our band would play a show with their band and everybody would be buds. And it kind of materialized just like that. So at some point, there's a longer version of the story that involves heartbreak and betrayal and whatever, but excuse me. At some point, a friend of ours, kind of through like bullshit means, joined Catharsis. maybe it's not fair for me to say it was bullshit, but it was yeah, it was odd to say at the time. There was a friend of ours in Connecticut learned about Catharsis through our band. There was like your band's really good. Who do you listen to? And we were like, oh, we listen to Catharsis. And she was like, that's awesome. And then she wasn't really into any of that stuff at the time, like politically or anything. And I think she had like she ended up with a broken heart, and then like, you know, while she was nursing a broken heart, Catharsis came through on tour, and she just like hopped in the van and went on tour with them, and then became buds with them. And then when they all got to North Carolina, and it was expected that she would find her own way home, she was like, actually, I think I'll just stick around, and I kind of been picking up on your songs a little bit, and they were like, yeah, we'll take a second guitar player. You know, we used to do it that way. Yeah. So she joined the band, and then shortly after, the bass player Ernie was he found out his girlfriend was pregnant with his first kid, and so he was like, you know, the band was planning on doing a 6-month European tour, and he was like, guys, like, I can't be away for 6 months. I'm about to be a dad.
Yeah.
So so they got a new bass player that was Josh from Trial, and he was in the band for like probably less than 6 months, and he ended up recording like the Arsonist Prayer stuff, and he was also on the Umlaut record, which, like, spoiler alert, is Catharsis. And then he just decided, he was like, actually, you know, this isn't for me. This isn't my scene. I miss Seattle. Whatever it was. So they were like, shit, now we're hurt up again. Who else can we call on short notice? And Steph, who is now a guitar player in Catharsis, was like, you know, when I was like heartbroken and like joined you guys on tour, I kind of left my roommate John just like up Schitt's Creek. So like, let's offer it to him, because he's the bass player for Breed Extinction. And I told you, this is convoluted.
It is convoluted.
And so John calls me, and he's like, dude, Catharsis wants me to be their bass player. And I was like, how do you feel about that? And he was like, I don't know. He's like kind of fuck them, but like, it could be fun. And I was like, I mean, it sounds like it's not for you. Yeah. And he was like, all right, you know, good talk. I'm not going to do it. And I was like, cool. And then I didn't know, but I was the next person in line. So they called me next. Brian called me. He's like, hey, how you doing? You want to play bass for us on this tour? And I was like, heck yeah. So yeah, I didn't realize I was setting myself up for a dick move, but I think I may have dashed some hopes and expectations that John had at the time. So I went on tour with them, and then just as a bass player, and that tour was the last Catharsis tour of them as a functioning band. Yeah. Matt Miller quit like mid-tour. Like basically you had this band that was like very popular and like, you know, in high regard. Yeah. And their core 4-piece was like what they were like really kind of built their brand on. Yeah. Their core 4-piece was now 3 people with these 2 younger kids from Connecticut. Yeah. And then Matt Miller quit mid-tour because it was a really long tour. And so now you had Brian and Alexi, and then these 2 kids from Connecticut, and it just stopped making sense to everybody. It was like too much to bear. Yeah. So we finished the tour, and Catharsis paid off all their debts and everything. And then it was like Catharsis never came back from Europe, honestly. Like everybody else came back. But then, you know, 10 years later, nostalgia, the internet, social media, all that stuff brings nostalgia to the I don't know, just like gives a front seat. Yeah. And so Catharsis was like, let's do reunion tours. And so they did. And I think the first one they did maybe was 2012, I want to say. Yeah. I remember seeing them in North Carolina and Raleigh, and just, you know, they were back to that core 4-piece. Actually 5-piece, because Jimmy Chang from Undying, he was actually the original guitar player of Catharsis, and he came back in for the so it was, you know, Jimmy Chang, Matt Miller, Ernie, Brian and Alexi. They played as a 5-piece, and like that was cool. And then since I live in North Carolina now, at the time Brian was my neighbor, you know, so we the relationships formed there from being in that band kind of influenced me moving to North Carolina. That, and because Nato from Just for Today also lives down in the Chapel Hill area. So
Oh, nice.
so I happened to move down here, and then they got to a point where, again, Matt Miller wasn't available for a tour, and Brian was just like, "Hey man, you want to get the band back together? You want to go on tour?" Like Matt can't go, and you know, to date, you're the only one that has never quit the band. And like of everybody, you know, of everybody that's on this Catharsis tour, you're the only one that never actually quit. So it makes sense, you know.
Yeah.
You're hyper local to where we will be rehearsing and everything else, and like you've been in the band, and like so again I was like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's do it. And yeah, that was a cool I think actually the picture I posted to kind of like market that this conversation was happening today was actually from that 2013 tour.
Oh,
So
nice.
it's just another European tour. So I've played 2 Catharsis tour shows on US soil, and then, you know, 150 overseas.
Wow. No kidding.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Now, were you part of the band Thieves?
Yeah. So after Breed Extinction, me and the last drummer for Breed Extinction, Tim, who was never on any of the recordings, he and I and John, the bass player, we got together and started like doing this more creative, like not quite post-hardcore, but like a little more like proggy version of what Alaska was kind of presenting.
Yeah.
Just like a little more interesting, a little more involved, like more pedals, like some more layers, but still ultimately punk. And then, you know, we were like, let's get a standalone singer, because like 3 pieces are nice because there's fewer mouths to feed, but like, you know, I don't want to write lyrics. I'm busy. Like I'm busy tap dancing on all these pedals and like, you know, coming up with these sick riffs, brah. So so we talked to Kyle, who was like the Breed Extinction super roadie. He was like our younger brother that was just on every tour, and just he helped us carry all the gear, and he was just so stoked to be there. And he was in the Back and Forth of Courage. So you may have seen his band play a bunch. And he's been in some other bands since, but I think that was the big one. But so then he was a standalone singer, and that's what Thieves looked like. And there are some Thieves videos on YouTube, but they're hard to find because the word is so generic.
Yeah.
But if you YouTube, like, you know, Thieves Connecticut hardcore punk or something, there's like 4 videos from an old YouTube account that I put up back in like the very early digital camera days. So all the clips cut off at 3 minutes exactly, because that's what the camera would allow. But it was a basement show. Probably not Brian Furnett. Who succeeded Brian? It was Josh.
Josh from Red Scroll.
No, not Josh from Red Skull. There was a younger Josh who became like the next Lord of the Scene. He was like hosting shows in his basement and stuff.
Yeah.
In like middle Connecticut. But anyway, so there's a Thieves show online from that, and I actually have a bunch of Thieves footage from our tours, because we were never a local band. John had moved to Virginia. Like basically we got together, we rehearsed, and we like wrote a record, and then we were like, all right, we're gonna do a tour, and then John's gonna move to Virginia. And he did. And then he had a school break, like he was done for the year. And we were like, let's do another tour. And Kyle was like, great. So we booked it. So all Thieves ever did was a couple of like East Coast tours. But I have a lot of footage from those that I haven't actually ever put anywhere. But maybe I'll do that as well. Maybe Bandcamp for that, or
yeah, definitely.
Stuff.
I'm pushing all the older stuff to come back. You know what I mean? People. I was talking to Jeff. Like it's fun for people to, you know, think back on those times and listen to old music. Some people forget about stuff like that, and then they hear a band that they listened to back in the day, and they're like, oh shit, let me go back and listen to this band, and they're like, shit, I really forgot about how awesome this band was and stuff like that. So with my talks, I'm kind of trying to put that to the forefront and like remind people of how awesome like older music is, and it still stands up even today, stuff like that, as well as I listen to a lot of new music too. When we're talking about Connecticut, I think like Foxtails from Connecticut and Doom Beach.
Oh, I've heard of them.
And Doom Beach from Connecticut. Like now you have a bunch of younger kids making awesome music from Connecticut as well. So I try to talk about that as well and get, bands in people's ears and stuff like that. But, I kind of went off on a little tangent there. I wanted to get back before I forget about Kentucky, Louisville. Can you guys talk about the arrest? Are you privy to talk about this or?
Yeah, I'm game.
Passed a lot of checks to have my current job. I don't think this is going to disqualify me from any of that. So I think it's a safe story now.
Yeah, I'm self-employed, and I don't think anyone. I don't think any of my clients are watching this. But yeah, so we're on the tour where I'm playing drums, and John has a broken foot, so he plays all the shows sitting in a chair, and he's playing my guitar through my gear, and I taught myself how to play guitar, so a lot of my chords they look like like mangled fingers. They don't make a lot of sense because I'm trying to sound like two guitar players. But I taught him what I could, and he did a bunch. And as a bass player, he knows where all the root notes are. He knows effectively what it's supposed to sound like. So if he ever needed to guess, he could just power chord the root, and nobody would ever know.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I'm not a good guitar player as far as so all you just need to sound loud. That's my sound. You don't have to sound like you know what you're doing. If you have a knife and a volume pedal and like way too many amps, that's the Rob Davis signature sound.
Just check.
But I had to compete with Jeff, which is why it sounded like that.
I had the way around. I didn't realize we were both feeling like we had to keep up with. There was an unintentional arms race.
Yeah. So we're on that tour. We got an Australian guy singing my parts. He doesn't know what he's doing. This is truly like Tourette's at the karaoke bar.
To be clear, I'm the only member of the band playing his correct instrument in the band at this point. And I'm not even playing the parts I would normally play because I had John's parts because I was the second bass player. So instead of like power chording through one of your rat pedals or something, it was like I had to learn like what I used to play when John wasn't in the band. So none of it. It's a miracle it worked. I feel like.
I mean, well, to be clear, "worked" is a strong word to use. But so John is a classically trained musician. Like John has a music degree. He is like he's like a jazz beast. So all of his parts were kind of exceptional. Like he wasn't just just following the route kind of thing.
Yeah.
And Jeff's bass style was like somewhere between like following the root note, but also like listen to a lot of Radiohead. So he like wanted something a little more interesting to sink his teeth into.
My bass style was the bass edition of your guitar style, which is I've got this pinky thing not fretting anything right now.
That's right.
Where can I put that?
Yeah, I would play a power chord, and then whatever fingers I wasn't using were finding other notes that could complement everything. But effectively, John's bass style and Jeff's bass style didn't play well with each other because it was too much. Yeah. So we decided that one of them had to be the somebody's got to do it guy, and that was Jeff. So we gave him a pedal. We were just like, this is what a power chord looks like. Just try to keep up. And anyway, So we're on a tour. We're like 5 or 6 nights into like probably only like an 8 or 9 day tour. It was like maybe a 10-day tour.
Yeah.
And it's just a shit show. We've got a 5-piece band where only Jeff and Greg are the people that are in the band that are actually doing what they've trained themselves to do in the band. And then we've got 2 hangers on. One of them is the guy that claimed he was a better drummer than the one that we had to just quit. He had quit his job to go on tour with us because he was like, your drummer sucks. I could drum circles around him. And John was like, okay, cool. You want to go on tour? And he was like, hell yeah. And he literally quit his job and like came over to start practicing. But he was terrible. And so we were like, oh shit, Andrew, Andrew, you're not stage ready, but why don't you come with us anyway since you quit your job? So we had so we had the 5-piece band that was a shit show, plus Andrew, and then plus our friend Ian, who was he was like the other Kyle. He was a he like wasn't he wasn't in the band, but he was like a super roadie, and we just loved him, and he's a dear friend, so he kind of just came with us everywhere. So we have 7 people in a van, and we're like 6 days into a tour, 5 days into a tour, and things are starting to make sense. Like we actually, we played the show at the Brick House in Louisville, and things actually started to sound like the music we intended to play.
Yeah.
And we were like, like by George, I think we've got this. So we got really excited, and we were excited to see our friends in Louisville. We were excited that we finally played a good show, and then we went to Kroger's after the show, like a Kroger supermarket. It's like 1 a.m. in Louisville.
Yep.
And we thought we were really cool, and we were like, let's steal some dinner. Let's steal some pasta and some carrots or some hummus or something. Let's why pay for it? We're punk, dude. The world owes us. And so Andrew was new to this. He was just trying to keep up because he was like I might be in this band later because I quit my job.
Carrots at the required.
So I took him under my wing, and he was like, let's get this hummus, and I was like, cool, let's do that. And then I think somebody saw him trying to steal the hummus, and he was like, dude, that guy just saw me. And I was like, all right, well, here's, chill out, put it back on the shelf. Let's just leave, man. This is getting weird. We'll just leave. And the people that worked at Kroger wouldn't let us leave because they assumed we were, holding a bunch of ill-begotten goods.
Yeah.
But none of us were. We were just like, all right, F this, we're gone. Dan from Australia saw that some shit was going down, and he just got in the checkout line and bought a bottle of water, and just he started to walk out, and Kroger employees were like, wait, that, he's with them. He's one of them. And he's like, no, man, I'm from Australia. I think he literally said that. And they were like, oh, go out.
Yeah, you go ahead.
Right.
So Greg was too mature for our antics. So he just waited in the van. John had a broken foot, so he waited in the van. In Australia, Dan got out by the skin of his teeth by playing the I'm from Australia card.
Yeah.
I brilliantly, while not being surrounded.
I forgot about this.
Was not actually involved at this point. I saw, oh no, this is our tour's in jeopardy because, some dude who works at a Kroger in Louisville was gonna tackle the guys I'm in a band with. And I was right next to the door. We had just walked in the front door, and I decided the way to get everybody out of the Kroger was to create a distraction, which
classic Bartlett.
Haven't figured out now in this discussion is something I'm particularly good at. Right next to the door, and they were at another door. They were by the checkout, so I was, I could escape after creating said distraction. And
I think Jeff was next to the inbound door, not the outbound door, so he assumed it would open for him, when he approached it after creating the distraction.
This becomes part of the story. Yes. So there was so I'm looking around, how do I distract everyone momentarily so my friends can get away? And there's a metal cart with metal trays of freshly baked bread that they made, and they're gonna bag up and put out. Did I yell run? So I walked over and just shoved the whole 6 foot tall metal tray bread thing, just shoved it over onto the ground, which as you can probably imagine made the most god-awful noise that you've ever heard shy of the Extinction show. And then I ran for the door, and I made it to the door, and I ran headlong into the door because I think the door was 1 a.m. I think they closed that door at 1 a.m. So the door that I had just come in was no longer available for egress, if you will. And then I stopped, looked, and everybody who I had just intentionally distracted so my friends could get away, my friends are still detained, and they're all just looking at me now. And the only way out was over by the register where you guys were. So I was now scooped up in Kroger heroic I don't remember much after that. I remember offering to pay for the bread, and they were like, "Cool, but we're still gonna arrest you."
Yeah, they so Jeff abandoned his hopes of escaping, just kind of just lowered his eyes and dropped his head and just kind of sullenly walked over to where we were all sitting down, like not being allowed to leave.
Yeah. Prove the situation for anyone, I think, is in retrospect.
Yeah, so there's four of us sitting down now, and the Kroger's employees, the Kroger security is like, all right, you know, and some people are like, why are these kids here? And they're like, because they stole something. And we were like, we didn't steal anything, you know, like emptied our pockets, emptied our bags. There's nothing in it. Nobody had anything. And then our buddy Ian, our little our roadie extraordinaire, he actually had 2 carrots in his backpack, and he kind of like looked at us just like, sorry guys. And he just pulls these 2 carrots out, and Kroger's just, you know, all the employees were like, aha, we knew it. They called the cops, and the cops came, and the cops didn't want to hear anything. They were like, there was no chance of like, you can just pay for these and leave.
Yeah.
They were like, well, you boys are fucking silly, and you're all going to jail. So we all went in squad cars, and we all ended up in like the general holding cell, which is it's like a room. Yeah, it's like a room the size of like a small gymnasium. It's got bunk beds with cots, got, you know, toilets with no stalls, no doors, and Jeff was reminding us all. He's like, geez, like, you know, if you guys have to poop, don't forget about the courtesy flush. Like, nobody wants to smell it. Just as soon as it leaves your ass, you flush. Then you wipe and you flush again.
Meanwhile, like, there's all these, like, you know, people who've just been arrested for, you know, armed robbery or, you know, whatever, being in a gang. I don't know.
Yeah. It's a general holding cell. So you have, you know, rapists, murderers, burglars, whatever. Like, everybody's in.
We're terrified. I think, you know, I'm terrified at this point. And Rob and Ian are just like, they bring us food and it's like bologna we can't eat, like,
because we're fucking vegan.
They bring us all this food. So all I remember is me trying to just sleep through the night because we knew they were going to let us go in the morning when we had like our court appearance. And you guys were like giggling and making like sandcastles out of like mashed potatoes and peas.
So we had so you're given like a milk carton like you would have at school lunch.
Yeah.
And then like a bologna and cheese sandwich on white bread, and then like 2 like what is it, Hydrox cookies, and that's your meal, like 3 meals a day, like they're gonna keep you alive.
Yeah.
And so we get the sandwiches and we're like, oh, bologna, we can't eat that. So some of the other inmates really liked us. They were like, you don't want that meat, you know, like, and we're like, yeah, I'll trade you this meat for those cookies. And so we were rich with Hydrox. And then we had this like shit bread, and we decided that
it's 3-4 in the morning, by the way. It's in the middle.
Oh yeah, we're underslept, and everything's crazy. So Ian and I are dipping our white bread into the milk cartons, because once the bread gets wet, it's like a sponge, but it's like clay. You can like mold it. And we started making sculptures, and they're terrible because we're in prison and we haven't slept, and we're, you know, using milk-soaked bread. So Jeff is pretty sure we're all going to get stabbed.
Yeah.
And Ian and I are just giggling. I don't even remember what Andrew was doing. I think he was just you know, biding his time. I think he was just like making friends with other inmates. And then the morning later, the next morning, we were all released and then had to go to court. At which point, I remember this clearly. This is right before the Catharsis tour.
Yeah.
So
the tour in Greensboro, and then you just didn't come back. You went to.
That's right. We toured to Greensboro, and I just stayed.
Yeah.
And did some Catharsis stuff, but basically we went to court, and then we were divided by last names. Jeff and I have last names early in the, you know, Bartlett and Davis. We, you know, ABCD, you're in this courtroom, and then it was like, you know, EFGH, you're in this other courtroom, And so Andrew was in a courtroom, not with any of us. He was separate. He had a G last name. And he had a really cool judge that was just like, it says here you got arrested for stealing $5 worth of cheese. And he was like, no, sir, it was carrots, and I'm very sorry, and blah blah blah. And the judge was like, it also looks like you've been in the Army, because Andrew was in the Army.
Yeah.
And he's like, yes, sir. And he's like, I'm gonna call that time served. I want you to pay $10. Pay $10 to like symbolize paying for the food, basically.
Yeah.
And get out of here. You're done. And then Jeff and I are in our courtroom, and I get told that I have to pay like $300 worth of court fees or something like that. And I'm like, I don't know about that. So I just go sit down. I'm like, I'm gonna wait my turn to come around again.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, Jeff has his turn, and they were just like, yeah, you just have to do community service. So Jeff comes back and sits down with me, and I was like, what'd you get? He's like, just community service. And I was like, dude, they give me a $300 fine. So I just stood up, not realizing the etiquette of court, and I walked, right up to the prosecutor, and I was like, dude, I was like, he just has to do community service, and I get a fine. Like, let me get community service. And the prosecutor was like, it's not your turn, man. Like, you can't just like stand up and talk to me. And I was like, oh, what about the community service though? And he was like, talk to me after all this shit. So I waited around, and he talks to me after his like docket was filled or whatever. And he's like, what is your problem? And I told him, I was like, I'm a poor kid. I'm a punk kid. I don't have $300. Like, let me just do community service. And because I thought for sure, like when you're on a punk tour, you're going to meet somebody that works at a nonprofit or a Food Not Bombs or something.
Yeah. Somebody
is going to sign a piece of paper for you that says, yeah, this guy totally did 100 hours community service.
Yeah.
So he was like, fine, you can do community service. But in Kentucky. And I was like, I don't live in Kentucky. He's like, in the States, anywhere in the States, just send us the thing. Yeah. And I was like, dude, I'm going to Europe in like a week for 6 months. And he was like, and you don't have any money. And I was like, dude, it's punk rock.
Yeah.
I'm going with Catharsis, like we just eat out of garbage, and like I don't have any money, but I was like, I don't have time to explain to you how like the punk scene works, but you can be in a band and you can tour around and you don't need any money. You just need to make sure you have gas in the tank and a place to land, And anyway, finally he was just like exasperated. He's rolling his eyes, and he's just like, all right, you can complete your community service in any country the U.S. has like healthy relationships with. And at the time, I think that just excluded Bosnia, and Bosnia and Serbia and stuff. And
wait. So you were with Catharsis and you did community service for the time we all got arrested in Kentucky. That actually happened?
While on tour with Catharsis, I got a piece of paper signed by some crust punk in Hamburg that was like, oh yeah, you fucking swept the floor of our squad, or whatever it was. He's like, I got you.
The funniest thing about this interview, right, is that I'm sure everybody expected we were gonna music or like bands, shows we played and stuff we've done. Like, this is the perfect metaphor for Breed Extinction as a band and Breed Extinction shows. Like, you come to see Breed Extinction, and sometimes it's a good show probably, and sometimes it's a fucking train wreck disaster and everybody ends up in the middle or in the inside of a Louisville prison. I think we're there. I think we're at the what did I sign up for? Right. Discussion they're gonna talk about what it was like back in the day to make music. No, we're gonna talk about how if you're ever arrested in Louisville for shoplifting a fucking carrot, you can use wet bread to make clay.
Right. You can make a sculpture in a Louisville prison and trade your bologna for cookies.
Yeah,
that's what a good vegan does.
That's bologna's lessons right there.
Well, so that I think the last punchline of the story is we all had our various punishments doled out to us by the Jefferson County Correctional Facility in Louisville, Kentucky. And but Ian, the one who actually got caught with the carrots, he was in a separate courtroom altogether because he has a very late in the alphabet last name.
Yeah.
And his judge was like wholly unsympathetic. Was just like, you're an idiot. You're going to pay the $300 court fine. You're going to do the 1,000 hours community service, maybe 100 hours, whatever it was.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to pay for the food, and you know, and he had no basis of comparison, so he was just like, okay.
Yeah.
And he came out, and we were all kind of mad at him anyway, like jokingly. He actually was afraid of getting stabbed. So Jeff was afraid of getting stabbed because he thought we were being assholes in the jail.
Yeah.
Ian was afraid of getting stabbed because whenever the people in there were like, you know, what are these, you know, what are these clean cut like suburban white kids doing in prison? We were like, oh, funny story. You know, our friend over there stole some, and everyone would give Ian like a dirty look, and he was terrified. But anyway, so he gets out of his courtroom, and he has the biggest punishment, and we're all like, well, it serves you right, man. But that's the Louisville story effectively. And then we only missed the one show. We missed Knoxville.
We went straight to Greensboro from Louisville. We played the last tour, which was the first set of the Catharsis tour.
That was Did Catharsis? Did we play that night?
Yeah. It was like the period of time where Catharsis was going to start playing Exterminating Angel, and there's one other track that they hadn't played before live, right? So it was like
that was at the time that was the only. Yep. Exterminating Angel was never a song to be played live because it was about suicide. Brian was like against it, but Steph and I convinced him. We were like, dude, that song fucking rips.
Yeah.
So he was like, okay, I think we can do it. So that at the time that was the one and only U.S. appearance of that song being performed live.
Right. Oh, no kidding! Wow.
Essentially, I saw the last real U.S. Catharsis show because
before it was like reunion stuff.
Yeah, and then you went to Europe for 6 months.
Right.
I like took a bus home that was when you could forge a Greyhound bus pass if you had access to a copier, like some wheat paste. I don't know. I do remember it took me 24 hours to get home. My van was parked like out front of your place, and I was so exhausted I just fell asleep on like the metal cargo floor of the van for a couple hours before I drove home.
That sounds right.
Yeah.
And then we got back together in like 6 months and started writing Alaska with a new drummer.
Yeah, with Matt.
Now, was there any like new songs that are put in the vault that never came out that you guys were working on? Like,
I have a couple. One of them, I started like a solo project on the heels of a breakup a couple years later. That I aptly named Ashes versus Leaves, and one of the songs on that record, was the last Breed Extinction song, except we never really had lyrics, so I basically added lyrics and made them melodic because I was trying to do more of like an indie rock thing.
It's really good. It's half of the last Breed Extinction song, and I think half of the Demon Lion project that you and I were doing with John Miller.
Right, exactly. Well, I think we, I mean, it started from that riff, like the opening riff, this like drop D riff, and then Jeff added some really sweet bass lines, and then it was never fully finished, but like we were like, I think it's gonna go like this, and
played that live.
But then I recorded it as my own song. Yeah, I was like, "Fuck you, Jeff, I got this."
We played because I quit the band. I was like,
Jeff quit music. Jeff sold all his gear and like moved to Tennessee and was just like,
because we were on
just disappeared.
We played Louisville on the 2004 tour, so 2 years after, like whatever the next time we went back to Louisville was, and we played the Louisville. I remember I played Naked, where we played a house show in Louisville. I played.
That's right.
It was the point where I was trying to figure out like who is this for? Like it's just not inspiring me the same way it used to, and I was having this kind of like existential crisis. And I played Naked basically just to fuck with our drummer because he had to look at my ass the entire set. And at the end of that show, I remember you and I went outside. I remember going outside talking to you and being like, I don't know what it is, but like something's not connecting for me anymore about playing music. And then I literally we went home. I quit the band. You guys went on to form Thieves.
Right.
I can't remember if I was still filling in for In Pieces at that point or not. I think I might have been. And then I sold all my shit and left and moved to Arkansas, and no one ever heard from me again, pretty much.
That sounds right. Because you moved in what, 2004? 2004? 2005?
February 2005. And I filled in for In Pieces until, I want to say mid 04.
Yeah.
Because there was a point where they were like, hey, do you want to join our band permanently? And like a fucking moron, I was like, nah, no, I'm going to get married and move to the Deep South instead, which is, in retrospect, not the smartest decision I've ever made. Those guys went on to find Rob and record Lines Red History.
Yeah, I wanted to speak about In Pieces real quickly. Were they on tour and they kind of were falling apart and then you kind of filled in? Is that kind of how it happened?
So Eric from Just for Today, who is no longer with us, he was the drummer for Just for Today. He at one point had decided he was going to move to California to be with like some girl he met on the internet or something, and we had like studio time booked to record a 3-song demo, and it was like a week later. Hey, Rob, why are all of our stories like this? Like, we're going to do this thing, and then somebody quit.
I think it's just the human experience.
Probably. So TJ from In Pieces, who band we were friends with, we played with a bunch, out of nowhere, like was like, dude, I'll totally fill in for this demo for you guys, and the demo's still out there. Learned our songs in a couple of days, recorded this demo with us, really stepped up and like helped us get that done. And so when In Pieces put out the Learning to Accept Silence record, they got ready to go. I'm going to flub this story, and TJ or Val or Rick, by all means, reach out, correct me on this, but I'll give the version of it I remember, which will be some butchered version of it. They went on tour to support Learning to Accept Silence. So they went down to Florida, and they had a bus. They had like a tour bus. They had all this merch that they had to like pre-purchase from the label to support them for this whole, whatever, 3, 4, 5-week tour, 3-week tour or something. And they got down to Florida. I don't know what happened, but their singer and their bass player quit the band and like got in a plane and flew home. Like, fuck you guys, we're done. We're out of this band. The end. And then In Pieces was like, well, okay, we can't fulfill any of these shows anymore. We're just going to drive home. And then their bus broke down. So they limped home like whatever, like a week later or whatever it was with no band, no singer, no bass player, a shitload of merchandise like CDs and picture discs and shirts and all that stuff they were going to owe somebody money for eventually if they couldn't, and then some show obligations. And when I heard that happen, I was like, well, I can't sing, I can't fix your van, but when we needed somebody, you guys were like immediately stepped up for us. So like, yeah, I'll play bass. I wasn't really into In Pieces that much at the time, but I was like, yeah, I'll whatever, cool. And we ended up doing some of my favorite shows I've ever played were In Pieces shows. We played a show with Dredge in New Jersey with no singer, and we were like, well, we had no gear. We just drove down there with like everybody's Honda Civics and borrowed gear from other bands, and figured it was gonna be a disaster. And had a great show with no singer. They just put a mic in the crowd, and there were enough people that knew all the songs. They did all the singing. It was amazing. So kind of a like until you guys could find a bass player thing, and then eventually. They found a bass player, went on to record another record, and those guys, a couple of those guys went on to move to Brooklyn and formed a band called Bare Hands and have gone on to be pretty successful.
Yeah. I don't want to keep you guys too long, but Jeff, I wanted to talk about Fixtures real quickly too. The new band that you're doing right now. I heard some of the music and I really enjoy it. It almost has that Just for Today like. Indie, emo-ish kind of vibe to it. Can you talk about that real quickly?
Yeah, I'll give you that. Like the 3-minute version is because to Rob's earlier point, when I did Extinction, I just disappeared off the face of the earth. Like I sold all my stuff, stopped playing bass completely, moved to a state where there's no scene, 7 decades. I mean, just shit. Never thought I'd play music again. A couple years ago, 2 years ago, actually today. Eric from Just for Today, the drummer from Just for Today, took his own life. And obviously, it was very traumatic for those of us who spent a lot of time with him. And Rob, that was the first time you and I had talked in a long time. And we got on the phone. We kind of all got together and just talked it out. Like, holy shit, like this person we really cared about is no longer with us. And there was a lot of discussion about completing the Just for Today demo record that I just mentioned. It never got off the ground. I mean, people, we're all 40 or in our 40s. A lot of us have kids at this point. Like, it's just hard to do. I'm in Washington, Jay's in Arizona, Rob's in North Carolina, a couple people are in Connecticut, just, scattered to the winds at this point. So there was a point where like I'd been playing bass for a while to get ready for that, and it just kind of felt like it was never going to happen, and it has not yet happened. And I literally just went on Craigslist. I was like, well, I live in Seattle. I mean, there's probably somebody cool that I might want to be a part of. And literally the day I did that, I found a guy here in Seattle. His name is Kyle, and he had written some demos and was like, hey, we need a bass player. I found the drummer, but and it was like I was way practiced, so it was way over my head to be able to play, but stuff that I would really like to play. So I just kind of, crammed for 2 weeks and tried out and was barely able to hang on through the songs, at least to demonstrate that I knew the songs. And that's turned into a really cool thing. So, if you had asked me a couple of years ago, do you think you'll ever play music again in like an original band or in any meaningful way? I would have told you fucking absolutely not. Like, that's a part of my life that died 20 years ago. And it's fucking 100% Eric Allen's fault. But it's like sort of reawakened that for me, that making music. And I'm having, we just recorded a 4-song live set. We're working on a full length. We're playing shows. It's been a blast, and it's been, kind of makes me look back at some of the things we're talking about, think like, what the fuck was I thinking, sort of giving up all this stuff at 23 when I could have been doing it this whole time. Rob, you and I could have had like 4 more bands after that. And there's like, really...
I think I did without you.
Yeah. Right. That's on me. But yeah, no, Fixtures it's been a blast. Really, really fun to be a part of, and really, really exciting to be at my advanced age, if you will, making like original music that I feel really good about and care about.
Well, I'm glad to
really
hear that you're playing.
Yeah. What's that, Rob?
I was like, the odds are not in your favor to like
no
to literally be 42 and like go to Craigslist to find a band, and you find guys that are like-minded, the same stage of life, and they're like, here's some music that's really good, and you're like, oh, this is the music I was playing 20 years ago when I put this down. It's like it's some sort of kismet or something,
What are the fucking chances? Right. Yeah. So it feels like an opportunity to seize in that regard, right? Because if this doesn't work out, like I can go back on Craigslist. There's gonna be some other awesome like hardcore band. You're gonna step in a metal band. It's just not. It's not.
That's not a thing. That you struck gold. you found a unicorn.
Yeah.
Well, I have to say, you guys didn't age at all, because minus the gray hair. I mean, you guys look just as young as you did, 20 years ago when we're all, at the same shows and stuff like that. So
yeah.
I mean.
I had this 20 years ago. I had gray hair 20 years ago. I just grew it out and dyed it black and wore a white belt like everybody else. You'd never know.
Yeah, I lost my big gray beard. I had the Santa beard for a while, but
Yeah.
You don't look 50 at all, especially without that beard. I was like, this guy's lying to us.
I wish I was, but it's crazy. Rob,
you give us hope.
Well, I mean, anything I can do for you guys, I'm there for you. Rob, do you have any bands that you're in right now that you're working with, or? Most recently, I played. Let's see. I kept doing music until. I still play music. Since my daughter was born, I've just been playing in a cover band locally, because there's no rehearsals. You always get paid. All the shows are 20 minutes from home. Yeah.
And I've just been playing drums in a cover band for the last 5 years. Prior to that, I was drumming for Des Arc for I was drummer number 48 for Des Arc. And prior to that, NATO from Just for Today, and I had what I think was a really cool metal band called Swordmasters of Ganaz. And that's, you can find all that stuff on Bandcamp, Swordmasters at Bandcamp. I think that's some really, really cool stuff that we that was definitely a labor of love. And it could have gone a lot further had all the pieces of our personal lives allowed us to continue putting in as much effort as we were putting in. But that was NATO and I, and then a couple other friends here from North Carolina. But yeah, no. Presently, I've got my solo project, Ashes versus Leaves, which has been mostly just me for the last like 10 years, and not super prolific. I put out a record of like in 2011 that was like, I was like, this is going to be like a rock kind of indie record, but there's going to be a lot of scraps from like hardcore riffs that I still had, that I had never used. And then of course I toured that record just with an acoustic guitar, because of course I did. And then immediately I put out like an acoustic guitar EP that I toured as a band, because of course I did. And nothing really came much of it. It's the indie scene makes no sense to me. I think you have to be probably just like way more like handsome, way more charismatic, and maybe just have better songs for anyone to give a shit. And I think as a family man, you know, as a guy that's like, I got the wife and the kid and the house and the dogs and all that stuff. It's like, it's a part-time job to try to like get that shit off the ground, especially when you have no help. So I don't do much with it. I play some local shows here and there, and I occasionally will put some songs on Instagram or whatever. But that can be found Ashes versus Leaves at Bandcamp, and you could probably search my Instagram profile for a couple of just me playing guitar. You know, it's a lot of like just like sad bastard like whisper folk stuff. But yeah, I think that pretty much covers it.
Nice. Before I get to rapid fire, I just wanted to ask one more question to you guys. Now, say if Brian Burnett was like, hey, I'm going to do a Friendly Fest 5, Breed Extinction reunion show. Would that happen for you guys? Like, say if it happened in a year, and he came up to you and was like, guys, I'd love to have Breed Extinction do a reunion show up here in Connecticut. Like, would you guys be open to that?
I would be. I think it would be a huge undertaking but thankfully I think we're all mature enough musicians that we could probably just, you know, remember all the songs on our own. And then if we could get together and be like, yeah, this is our one rehearsal before playing this Friendly Fest. Like, I think it's possible. We could all coalesce in Connecticut and like, you know, practice in my parents' garage for like 3 hours, and then go play a show or something.
Yeah, it's interesting. If the ask here is who says no, I don't think either of us says no at this point. The challenge for me and perhaps for you, Rob, too, would be doing the vocals, the instruments at this point. I don't know if I can do my vocal parts like my throat coming out.
Oh yeah. I don't know about that. But I mean, if it's a one-off, like I would.
Yeah, I could do one.
I'd throw my throat out for a day.
But I would
for a week.
I think I would absolutely. I would have to fly across the country, but I think I mean, there's not really a reason to say no. So find us a drummer who can play that shit. Can you think Tim can still do it?
Yeah, Tim is still a competent musician. He's just tainted with Brooklyn, Brooklyn hipster stuff. But I think we could slap it out of him and just be like, you know, play it DB, you bastard.
Book it. We'll figure it out.
Nice. Are you guys ready for some rapid fire?
Rapid fire.
All right.
Are you directing these questions to me or to Jeff, or?
Both guys can answer.
Just whoever. Okay.
Yep. My first question always is all-time favorite New England hardcore punk band for you guys all time.
God, that's a really hard question. There's way too many options.
I'm gonna say the CDs that still are on rotation and live in my shit. Dead Guy, Converge. Although I don't celebrate Converge's entire catalog, to be clear.
Well, Dead Guy's from New York, so or
New Jersey.
So, but we're talking New England, just Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Maine, Vermont.
Yeah.
I mean, Converge is a safe bet. Barrett, Cave In, First Aid Kit. These are all things I would still regularly listen to.
Yeah. ISIS, Cave In. Yeah, you guys talked long enough for me to think about it. That scene to me, that there was that period of time where it was Bane and Converge and Cave In and ISIS, and we were kind of coming out on the tail end of that, and like, I haven't seen anything like that since.
Yeah. All right. Sweet. My next question: what was the first punk hardcore show you attended? Like real hardcore show?
I started going to hardcore shows when I was like 15. So there was a band from Connecticut called Puncture, P-U-N-K, Chure. They were actually a legit band with a silly name, but this was like right as like crust punk and like politics were like merging. So it was a nice gateway to things like Catharsis, where you would see that more commonplace. But yeah, like I was in a band called the Alcoholics, and just like a shitty punk oi band. There was like me and the bass player were like punks, and then the singer and the guitar player were skinheads. And it was terrible, but like, you know, I think I was 14 or 15 and looked like I was 12 and was going to shows.
Yep.
But I the first like memorable hardcore show was probably something after that. Something like 23rd Chapter or Catharsis or I Hate Breed. Actually, if you look closely at the back of Satisfaction Was the Death of Desire, both me and Greg are in the picture that's on the back of that.
Oh, no kidding.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. It was a show at Tuxedo Junction in Danbury, Connecticut.
Oh my God. What's the you might know there was a Sportsplex in Bristol. So I think it was in Bristol. So the first
Bristol skate park?
Oh,
no,
yeah.
skate park. There's like a sports. It was like
Sports.
Yeah, because my first show I ever saw was Hate Breed, Earth Crisis. And,
Oh yeah, I was at that show.
yeah. Okay. That was the show that made me. What was the name of the venue? Where was that? Bristol. It was like
I think it was like the Bristol
thing.
sports comp.
Yeah, the Bristol sports thing. Totally. So I went to
Yeah.
that show.
It was like an indoor soccer arena.
Yep. Yeah. I remember Overcast being good. You know, that was the first hardcore show I ever went to. There was like a half dozen fist fights at that show. It was like very violent, and I didn't go to a hardcore show for another year. So that was I sort of told that story earlier, but yeah, I can't believe you were at that. We missed connection. We could have started briefly.
Sports
Jay
Palace.
says the Sports Palace. There it is.
Yep.
Thanks, Jay.
Yep. I knew. Yeah.
It's funny about Hate Breed. A lot of people from this area love Hate Breed, and honestly, I mean, I'm not knocking Hate Breed at all because I saw them live a bunch of times and stuff like that, and they were fun, live. But Under the Knife is really the only thing that resonates for me. Anything else?
I still have that 4-song like demo
Yeah.
cassette.
Like anything else,
That thing's got to be worth money, right? I've just been waiting to cash that in.
Like, I think that's the only thing that I really, really like from them. You know, the album that they did right after that, it's decent, but it's not like Under the Knife. So I mean, I know everybody loves Hate Breed and stuff like that, but
no, I'm with you. I'm with you 100%. Like, I think as Hate Breed started putting out like full records, yeah, I was like, but that's around the same time where I was like, oh, have you heard of this band Catharsis? Have you heard of this band His Hero's Gone? Like, I was like, this is much more my speed.
Yeah, definitely. All right, my next question: what was your all-time favorite show you played?
In Breed Extinction?
Like, since I have both the Breed Extinction, and like the most memorable one that meant the most to you guys.
I'll go first. It's the Greg's Last Show. Greg's Last Show was the one for me. So that would have been Friendly Fest at the VFW in Wallingford. I was terrified because I'd never done vocals in front of humans before. Not that you could hear what I was saying, but I was still worried about being able to do it and it go well. And I have I still have a lot of pictures from that show, and that was just. Wait, Rob. The real answer to this is the Porno Helmet Show, is it not?
Oh my God, probably.
Was that your answer? Can I switch my answer?
I think that should be your answer. The Porno Helmet Show was
right.
something special. But I think my answer might be as far as just like nostalgia. Like, I remember it was either like my first show back after Catharsis was like a nice warm welcome at the Student Union Center. Maybe that, or maybe that Friendly Fest show, or maybe Mission Street Records in San Francisco, because I just remember as a band we were on tour for long enough at that time that we weren't capable of playing a wrong note, so it sounded like CD tight. It was like I remember we had some friends actually from the East Coast at that show that were like, that was the tightest I've ever seen you play. So I remember that, but it wasn't like, it wasn't my favorite show for sentimental reasons. I was just like, yeah, we were a well-oiled machine at that point.
That's damning with faint praise. That's like, that was the first time I've ever seen Breed Extinction where I could make out what was going on. It's
right.
A pretty low bar.
Right.
Nice. All right, I'll keep going. My next question: what was your all-time favorite hardcore punk show you attended that you didn't play? That you went and saw a hardcore band. What was your favorite one?
I got this. Second to last Orchid show in Philly. It was Orchid, Combat Wounded Veteran, Shiner, and Engine Down at First Unitarian. It was amazing. And the bass tone that the guy from Combat Wounded Veteran made come out of his amplifiers was the most horrifying noise I've ever heard. And I remember hearing him tell the sound guy, like, no, it's on purpose. Yeah, no, that's what it sounded like.
That's my sound. That's my sound.
It's like the Brown sound. Like, it's my ongoing quest as a bassist is to make that noise. I'll get there.
Yeah. At the risk of sounding like a Catharsis whore, I saw Catharsis in I think it was in a studio in New Jersey in like '97. That was my first experience with them live, and again, it sounded like the record. It sounded like somebody put Samsara on a really awesome sound system, and just pressed play. And I was like, Jesus, this is really good. But I probably have a more creative, honest answer than that. But that's the first thing that comes to mind. Again, just sonically, I'm always impressed when bands sound good, which is surprising given the bands I've played in.
Nice. My next question, I always ask this. I'm a big movie guy. I watch as much movies as I can that I haven't seen before. What was your last movie you guys watched?
I watched The Gentleman on Netflix. It's McConaughey. It was a Guy Ritchie film with McConaughey and Charlie Hunnam, and I watched that. I don't know, last week. Yeah,
I've seen that. I liked it too. I thought it was good.
Good.
I liked it a lot better than Wrath of Man that Guy Ritchie did. Like after that movie, that was with Jason Statham. That was rough for me.
I thought that movie was also good, but I thought the ending was weak.
Yeah, I thought
the ending was really weak, but the rest of it I thought was like well paced, and I actually it captured my imagination enough that I rewatched it and wrote down all the important dates so I could like make a Wrath of Man timeline. And then I was like, oh, this happens 3 weeks after that, but they're talking about something that happened 6 months ago, but they're planning for a heist on Black Friday. And I had to map it out so that I could look at it and be like, oh, okay. And then I think I watched it again after that.
Really?
Just with the map in hand.
Yeah. Nice.
Anyway.
Jeff, what was your last movie you watched?
It's been a couple of weeks. I watched was No Country for Old Men. I'm a big Coen Brothers guy. I hadn't watched that in a while. Obviously, a pretty disturbing movie. I tend to like the way that they have sort of better developed characters than a lot of movies these days. I think where it's like an actual complex human, where it's not sort of distilled to like one emotion, one motive for that person. But I'm probably not as much of a movie guy. But yeah, that's a really good one.
Now, speaking of Coen Brothers, did you see? I think it's called The Ballad of Buster Scruggs.
Yes, that's
that
really
was that was good.
Those that are like profoundly disturbing in the best possible way.
Nice. Yeah, I always ask that. It's just one of those things that I always do. And I also asked about hip hop. I'm a big '90s boom bap hip hop guy. If you guys have been listening to hip hop at all, what have you been listening to?
I teach fitness classes at like 6 o'clock in the morning, and the soundtrack is almost exclusively '90s hip hop by my design. I'm like, hey, what do you want to listen to? And somebody says something stupid. I'm like, that's cool. Tupac it is. All the hits like California Love or like some Nas or Tupac or stuff. With age, I've developed the security to like branch out from only listening to punk music.
Yeah.
And I've actually come to appreciate some of the hits.
Yeah.
Run the Jewels 3. That's what I keep
Oh,
in my head.
dude, R2J is so good.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was talking to Matt Prater from Love Lost last week, and we were talking about stuff. And I was telling him I was on a Hall and Oates kick for a while, and now
They're legit.
Now it's fused into like I'm crazy into soft rock right now, so I'm doing like Seals and Croft and like
Yes.
Little River Band and stuff like that. I don't know what it is, but it's been hooking me lately. So that's
You
what
should.
I've been doing.
So if you appreciate live music, there's a whole YouTube series called Live at Daryl's House, and it's Daryl Hall like playing a lot of Hall and Oates songs, but like with other musicians. Like I think they do like "You Make My Dreams Come True" with Kenny Loggins, and they do some other
Oh, no kidding.
some other songs. But some of the musicianship, even though some of those guys are in their 60s, it's like just watching some of the musicianship again. This is like it just sounds good. It's like everybody is playing what they're supposed to be playing at the right time. Yeah, so that's really good. But also, God, what was the other thing you just said that reminded me? Yacht Rock, also on YouTube. There, have you seen the Yacht Rock? Yeah, if you look up Yacht Rock on YouTube, you'll find a whole like web series of like DIY. It's like a bunch of Brooklyn kids all dress up like they're from the 70s, and they all play the characters of like Michael McDonald or Daryl Hall.
Oh, no kidding.
And they have this totally invented melodrama of all of these characters getting together, and it's like it's dry, but it's also hysterical how to what lengths they go to do this. And it's probably 10 or 15 years old, but it's all on there.
Oh,
there's like I don't know 10, 20 episodes, and they're all like you could get lost just watching. It might be called the Yacht Rock Chronicles or something.
Yeah.
If I find it, I'll send you a link.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'll be down a rabbit hole watching that stuff. And my last question to you guys is your favorite Breed Extinction song that you guys like to play live. What was your favorite one that you like to play live?
I would say the Lorax.
Ashes versus Leaves.
Nice. Yeah. Like I said, everything that was put out by Breed Extinction